sure, bhai.
Yeah. So hello everyone. I'm Karan Kantiran, core team member at TESOL ITBHU. And I'm really excited to welcome you all to the Know Your Department session of Physics Department. And our aim is to enable students to have an entrepreneurial perspective to this series. And the speaker will be discussing about job prospect, research opportunities, and entrepreneurial scope in a department. And for today's session, we have Shyam Menon as our speaker. He's an ITBHU alumnus, 2019 pass out from physics department. He did his dual degree at ITBHU and he's currently doing his PhD at Australian National University. So I would be delaying no more time. I would like to pass on the mic to Shyam, sir. So over to you, sir.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Karan, for the introduction. Feels really good to be here. Thanks for inviting me to be part of this session. And I'll try my best to give as much information as I'm capable of giving based on my experience of college and post-college and the kind of work that I do. And I'm open to questions at the end of what I have to talk to you guys about. So I'll just try sharing my screen now because I have some slides. Karan, do you think you can enable screen sharing?
Okay, I'll make you the co-host. Okay, just see if you got.
Yes, I can do that now. Right.
Yeah.
Do you guys
we can
see my screen?
Yeah, we can see.
All right. Okay, is that good?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so I thought I would prepare some slides just to tell you guys what I did in college and how I reached this point where I am doing a PhD. So just to give you guys some perspective on what I know and what kind of questions you can ask me. So I'll just get started straight away. So who am I? So I passed out in 2019 after a 5-year IDD in engineering physics in 2019, and currently I am trying to obtain a PhD at the Research School of Astronomy and Astrophysics at the Australian National University. I have been here for the past 2 years, more or less, 1.5 years. And just a layman's understanding of my research could be that I'm trying to understand the physics of the formation of stars through computer simulations and associated analysis of observed data. So what can I help you with? I think this is very important because my perspective is very limited in terms of what I know, because as I mentioned, all my experience has been in research, all my internships have been in research, and everything that I've been involved with has mostly to do with research. And so I can talk to you about research opportunities, and I can help you with, if for those who are interested in doing PhDs, I can do that. I can help you with that. And also I can possibly help you with, just general engineering physics, how the course goes along, and what are the general opportunities that one could do with that. My perspective is limited. I don't have much experience with job opportunities in engineering physics, or entrepreneurship, what kind of stuff you could do. So for that, I have given you two contacts who you could get in touch with if you are interested in that. And I also have given the contact of Subaya Bose, um, who's another PhD scholar at the UC Merced in US. And yeah, so he's doing his PhD in biophysics, so which is a different kind of field to what I'm doing. So you could get a different perspective um, of how to get into research and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, just to give you some context. So I been doing my PhD. Sorry, I've been and I'm just going to talk about like stuff I did in the summers, because that's the kind of those the summers are when you actually do stuff in college, when you have research internships or positions somewhere. So in summer 2015, I didn't do anything. I was at home with my family. And if you're in your first year in college, I would recommend you do that, because you may not have the opportunity to do that possibly again in the future. In my second year summer, I was part of a research project um, with Dr. Prasoon Datta at IIT. I believe he still has the position there. Um, the following summer in 2017, I did a research internship at the University of Western Ontario in Canada. Um, and this was, sorry, um, say something? Did someone say something?
No, nothing.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So summer 2017, I was the University of Western Ontario in Canada. And it was part of the MyTax fellowship, which is a MyTax, for those who don't know, um, is a program that permits students to do projects in Canada, and these are fully funded projects. So if you are in your third or fourth year, I would recommend that you apply for this. It's a very good program, uh, very good funding, and very good projects as well, especially in physics. Yeah. Then the summer of 2018, I did another research internship, this time in Germany. And this was, uh, I obtained this position by emailing the professor directly, um, told him about my research, told him I did, this and this project beforehand. I would like to work with you. And I told him I don't have funding. Can you fund me? And he was able to arrange funding for my time there. After that, finally, after applications to many universities across the world, um, I obtained my current position as a PhD student at ANU. And again, um, this my PhD is again funded by my supervisor, because I could not obtain funding from the university. Um, so I'm just mentioning that the point of the funding is because that is an important aspect when you apply for something, and it is a possibility that you could be funded by a supervisor. But again, that depends on your experience, whether you know supervisor beforehand, and in some aspects, certain bit of luck as well. Um, right. So, right. So for those who are at their earlier stages in college, who are thinking about what you want to do, if you're clueless, if you're wondering what is out there for me, um, don't worry. That was me. That was my friends. That was basically everybody I know. Um, you don't know what you want to do, and that's completely normal. But it's good to think about what you want to do. So just to give some context, when I got into research, I'd like to point out that I actually didn't want to when I started college, um, because I thought it was boring. I thought you had to be a genius to be one. I knew I wasn't one. And it was just this confusing time where I was thinking about all possible prospects of things to do. So I was thinking about industry. I was thinking about doing a coding job. I was even thinking about, preparing for civil services examinations. Um, so I thought, and I tried out various things. I talked to people who are in those fields, um, and but research was something that was never on my mind, um, because of these points that I talk about here. Um, but the summer project that I did in 2016 with Prasoon, that changed my mind, because I mean, what I thought that science is, or what I thought that you do on a daily basis in science, was not what it actually is. I actually enjoyed the experience. And the only way I knew that I enjoyed the experience is because I had the experience. So, I mean, that's the takeaway that I would give to you for people who are yet to make a decision or who have already made a decision. Um, Try all avenues if possible. So, you know, what is that? Like, you don't know what you want to do unless you have some idea of what you're doing. And you'll only have an idea of what you're doing if you actually do it. That's my opinion. um, and also, like, we tend to have, images of some profession in our mind, that this is how something would be. And that could be, based on movies we see, or people we talk to, or just general, misconceptions that we might have. But that's very rarely um, the true reality of what it is. um, so yeah, try out possibilities whenever you can. So there are many opportunities even in college for you to try out stuff. So I would say you try it out. For instance, like, you have your, in terms of research, you have exploratory projects. I think, I mean, at least we had exploratory projects when we were in college. I don't know about you guys. And also you have your summers to try out different things. So even if you're thinking about industry, if you're thinking about research, I would suggest that you, mm, get involved in the practical aspect of it, of what you would be doing. If you want to be involved in industry, apply for an industrial internship. See what happens there. See if you enjoy it. If you want to do science, apply for a scientific internship. See what happens. um, of course, you don't have the time to do everything as well. So another important aspect of this is to talk to people who are doing something in a certain field that you're interested in. For instance, this this event is a perfect example of what I mean. um, that you have people talking about their experience in college, and what they think is important for a specific field or a specific job prospect. So yes, talk to people as much as possible. Um, and yes, as I have on the slide here, flexibility with your choices is key, because, like I said, as you gain experience, as you try different things, your views on what to do might change. Allow it to change. Don't be rigid that this is exactly what I need to do, and this is, I'm just going to go on this straight road and it's exactly what is going to happen. You never know. um, yeah, so adapt and evolve. um, so just to give an idea again, all my experience has been in research. So I'm just going to give an idea of what, essentially, what you do in research. What does research usually entail? At least my research, what does it entail? So a person working in a laboratory might have a different experience of what research is. So this is my opinion of what happens on a daily basis. So most of my time is spent reading papers. So there'll be a lot of reading. For those who want to be involved in research, there's a lot of reading involved. You should be comfortable with that. I would even say you should enjoy that. And specifically for my research field, there is a lot of coding. And I think over time, more and more research fields require coding. So I would suggest, if you can develop some skills in coding, I would suggest you do that, because I think coding right now is a general skill that is useful across the spectrum of whatever job prospect you have, whatever field you're planning to work on, or whatever you're planning to do. I would say coding is a useful skill to have. Um, a lot of talking with colleagues about science, about ideas. Like, people really underestimate the amount of talking and communicating that you have to do. There's lots and lots of it. You're not sitting in a room locking yourself up and just doing science. That's not how science is. There's a lot of talking, there's a lot of communicating, there's a lot of writing. You have to write papers, you have to write emails, you have to write documents. There's a lot of writing. Um, of course, some might attend some conferences. This is, of course, pre-COVID. After COVID, you're just sitting in a Zoom room. And yes, a lot of clueless thinking, because in research, there's a lot of uncertainty, because unlike, I would say, industry where you have fixed goals, in research is typically not fixed goals. You don't know what your goal is. You don't know what you expect to find. So it's a lot of, you might be clueless in a lot of times, but I think that's part of the process. Um, yeah. So my reasons for choosing research was because I had interest in the subject. I enjoyed the research process, and I realized that I enjoyed the research process because I had a summer internship with Prasoon, and then following projects just gave me more experience with it, and I realized that I enjoyed doing research. Um, I think another advantage is that you have that your working is mostly independent. Um, you have a supervisor, of course, but it's more the most of the work aspect is done by you. It's not a boss student relationship, I would say, but rather it's more of your research, your um, your work, primarily, and supervisors just there to help you, if that makes sense. Um, Another, I would say, advantage, at least that what I felt, was it's the your working environment is very informal, yet at the same time stimulating intellectually. It's a really nice working environment to be in research, and you have flexibility in working hours. But those are the pros, I would say, that I felt. But if I'm to be honest, there are, of course, cons. There are pros and cons at every prospect. Um, Science is very competitive. Academia is very competitive. There's limited funding. There's limited positions, and everyone around you is smart, because everyone who wants to do a PhD is, I mean, typically people who are ready to work hard. So it is competitive. You can't deny that, and your work-life balance may not be great. You would think that's not the case, because in industry you have fixed working hours, you have um, fixed deadlines and things of that sort, whereas in research you don't. But the very fact that you don't have deadlines, the very fact that you don't have fixed working hours, um, could mean that you are working more than you need to sometimes. But again, that depends on how you manage your work life balance. So I think that's dependent on person to person. And of course, if you're in scientific research, or if you're in um, academia, you are going to be less rich than your friends in industry. Period. You're not going to make as much money. I think that's a fact. So if you want to make a lot of money, I wouldn't say this is your ideal choice. So yeah, so this is just my honest pros and cons of science. So this is just to help anybody who are who's thinking of doing science, or thinking of not doing science, just to give some context to them. But again, this is just points based on my experience. So just take it as that. Do not take it as a true value. You know, um, everyone has a different experience. So my advice to you would be to actually try things out. Like I said before, um, that's the only way you will know that if you want to do it or not. Um, for those who have already, so this is just a slide for those who have already thought of, um, you know, pursuing research. Um, what I would say is get involved in projects as early as possible. Um, Even the smallest experience in research adds up, and it's typically very useful to have something on your CV when you apply. Let's say in your third year or second year or third year summer, you're applying for a program, you're applying to a professor. It's very very useful to have projects on your CV. It need not be, you need not publish a paper in your first year or second year. That's maybe asking too much. But just having something on your CV that says that you have been in a research environment, you have been in a lab, you have tried things out, you have prepared a report, you have given presentations, stuff like that is useful, and professors look for stuff like that. So the summer project in 2018 that I was involved in, and my PhD positions, both were funded by my supervisors, but both of them were funded because of my past experience with projects in fields that were similar to their line of work. That was why that was why I was provided funding, because of my experience in those projects. Um, so yeah, as much experience as possible, as early as possible. Um, Apply for different programs. There are a lot of programs in India, across the world, and I would say apply for as much as you can. You never know. It, there's no rule as to whether you would get it or not get it. I have seen people who you would expect would surely get a position, not get one. Um, whereas I've seen the reverse as well. Um, so yeah, apply. You never know. Um, but like I said, if you're starting with research and you don't have much experience, don't consider asking for funding, because, like I said, I mean, just think about a professor who's receiving your email and you're asking for funding. They would first consider whether it's worth funding you, right? Because they have to take money out of their grant to pay for you. They're only going to do that if they're sure that you can do what they want you to do. And the only way they would be sure of that is if you have some experience, if you have something on your CV that proves that you can do what they want you to do. Um, so yes, so start off small, start off with small projects at your home institution, somewhere else in India, and then go step by step. If you consider applying for a PhD, if you're in later stages of your college, write GRE and TOEFL. I think this is useful if you're considering masters or a PhD, and just typically useful because you never know when. Because I know a lot of people who have gone into industry, worked for a couple of years, and then applied for a master's, um, and in the US or somewhere else. And again, that requires GRE or TOEFL. So you have a lot of time in college. Use that time to write it. Your score is typically valid, I think, for 3 years, if I remember right. So you can, use the score that you have gotten in college for a while. And lastly, the nail in the coffin. Your CGPA is important. Denying that would just be false. So your CGPA is important, but I would say that your research experience is much more important, um, especially especially if you're um, applying for a PhD. Maybe for research internships, CGPA might play a bigger role, but for PhD, I would say that the more experience you have, the higher your chances of getting a PhD position. Um, Finally, some general pointers on college. I think this is something general across whatever prospects that I have that you might be interested in, whether it's jobs, whether it's research, whether it's entrepreneurship. Um, get involved in clubs, whether it be sports, whether it be music, whether it be arts. It all adds to your CV. Um, People look for it. Whatever field you're going to be going into, people look for stuff apart from your academics or your work experience. And most importantly, I think more than just points on your CV, I think it provides you with subtle but very important skill sets. You never know when that skill set is being useful to you, but it always is. It always is. Um, and also, I think another aspect is that when you get involved in uh, stuff like this, you also make a lot of contacts, you make a lot of friends, and that also adds to people you know, and thus the more you know, the more people you know, the more knowledge you get, and stuff like that. Um, Another thing is they so we used to have a lot of presentations and have to submit a lot of reports, whether it be for projects, whether it be for courses, whether it's for your thesis and stuff like that. Um, I remember thinking of it as a burden, but I would say that it's one of the most useful processes of college, because whatever you're going to be doing, whether you're going to be in research or you're going to be in industry, there's going to be a lot of presentations that you have to give. There's going to be a lot of reports that you have to produce, and this is just something that you're going to be having to do in life. I think that's general. This is a general aspect of work in the current world. So make use of the experience you're going to be gaining in college. Take it seriously. Uh, Gain the skills to make good presentations. Gain the skills to write good reports, because it's more important than you think. Um, yeah. Also, get in touch with seniors. Could be me. It could be the people that I listed, or anyone else you know. Um, because, like I said, everyone's opinion is biased. Everyone has a limited perspective based on their experience. So, like right now, what you're hearing from me is just my experience. It's very very narrow, field of view, if you might think of it. So the more opinion you get, the more narrow points that you pick out, the more complete your total view will be. So try to talk to as many people as possible, and remember that what they're saying is their perspective. Take it as that. Never take anything at true value. um, and try and match it with your experience, and then that can help you go forward with what you want to do. And most importantly, don't forget to have fun. um, College only lasts for 5 years, but the stuff that the memories that you have in college will carry you for the rest of your life. So yeah, don't forget to have fun. Also, it's important to work, but it's also important to have fun. On that note, I'm open to questions. I apologize if my perspective was very narrow. I know I didn't give much information for those who might be interested in job prospects or entrepreneurship. Um, I've given some contacts in my first slide. If you're interested in those prospects, I'm sorry, I just don't have the necessary experience. I haven't even sat um, in a job interview. I didn't even apply for placement, so I cannot give you that information. But the people that I pointed out to you on the first slide can, and I'll share these slides with Karan, and he can propagate it to you guys. Thank you.
Guys, you can drop down your queries in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself. There are a few questions in the chat box right now. Shamba, you can see.
Yeah, I'm just trying to.
Or should I
How
read
do
it
I
out?
stop? I'm sharing my screen. I can't find the.
You can see the pause and
Uh,
stop recording. You can.
yeah, the. Okay, stop share. Yeah. Okay. So you said in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I think I'll just read out the questions that I had. So Shaurya asks, would an industrial internship help if I'm applying for MS? Yes, I would say yes. It of course depends on what your what field you're applying for. Um, for instance, I mean, if you're planning to do something in core physics, like if you want, like for instance, my field, if you want to do a MS in astrophysics, for instance, an industrial internship may not help. But if it's if it's some field with an industrial background, let's say you want to work in nanotechnology or condensed matter physics and stuff like that, there you have industrial opportunities, and this, yes, your industrial internship can help and probably will help. um, yeah, so it depends on field to field, but typically yes, your work experience is something that is looked into when you apply for an MS. um, right, so Aryan asks, what about CGPA's importance in current scenario? um, yeah, like I mentioned in my last slide, CGPA is important. um, Irrespective of what you are going to be doing. If you're going to be doing your if you're going to be doing if you're going to be going for a job, and you're sitting for placements, there are CGPA cuts for every company. As you guys know, every company has a certain minimum CGPA that allows you to sit for their interviews, or give their tests. um, so yes, in that aspect it does, but like I mentioned before, it's not everything. It is something, of course, but it's not everything. It's not just just having a great CGPA but nothing else. I mean, it's not, I would say, very useful scenario. So you should have a mix of both. I would say you have a CGPA about 8 is, I think, safe, and anything about 8 plus a lot of experience in terms of practical, science projects and stuff like that. That would be, I would say, a safe bet. Um, yeah. All right. Varun. Varun asks, I am a fresher and I don't know how to get involved in projects, or how and where to read those papers and how to make reports. Basically, how to start the journey. Hi, Varun. It's really nice to know that you're interested in making the journey so early. Um, don't worry. I would say that no one knows. I didn't know. None of my friends knew. Nobody knows. In the first year, nobody knows how to do any of this stuff. But that's precisely why you are in college. That's precisely why you have 5 years in college to do those stuff. Um, so how to start the journey? I would say your first point of entry would be a project. So I don't know if you guys have exploratory projects now. Can someone say yes or no? Or just mention in the chat if you guys still have exploratory projects in your first or second years. I don't see anybody's. We do. Okay. All right. So Kartikeya says we do. Okay. So yeah. So I would say that's your first entry. That's typically in your second year. Um, so I found that the exploratory projects are very useful. Um, that you get in touch with the professor. He gives you some project for a short period. I think it's 3 or 4 months, and you work on that. And that's when that's your first exposure to experience to go with the report at the end of the exploratory project. So that's your first point of experience. It may not be great. Your first time is not always great, but then you learn. The more you do, the more you learn, the more mistakes you make. So yeah, so don't worry, Varun. You have a lot of time to do that. Just make sure to try and do it, and then you'll gain the skills you require. Aditya says, "Can I unmute and ask?" Aditya Surana.
Hi
Yeah, sure. Go
Bhaiya,
ahead,
can
Aditya.
you hear me?
Hey.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so if
sure.
I'm like research oriented and I want to do some concrete work like publish papers, work on research projects with professors, be an active
Mhm.
part of all technical teams, like all of which will assist me in narrowing my focus to research subjects,
Right.
then how do I go about it? And how do I convert my research work knowledge into employment?
Convert my sorry. What is the last
Convert
part?
my research knowledge into employment. Like at the end of the day, you have to earn money, right?
Right. Okay. Um, okay. So it's nice to know that you're interested in research. So, like I said, getting involved. You start off with projects, like I've pointed out many times. Depending on which year you are, um, it could be an exploratory project. It could be a summer project. It could be even your bachelor's or your master's thesis. Um, because those projects are, again, those are the solid work that you put in. That's where you gain the experience of research, and that's where you make some, do some solid work and you produce some results at the end of your project. um, so I mean, so can you give me some context on which year you are in, Aditya?
I'm a fresher.
You're a fresher. Okay,
Yeah.
sure. So when like I told Varun, at the moment I would say your coursework is important. Like your first year, second year coursework, very important. um, Across, I mean, whether you want to do research in physics or you want to do a core job in
Okay.
EP, I would say your
Yeah.
coursework is important, especially the stuff you learn. It's going to be useful at some point, especially your first year physics courses, second year your quantum physics, your thermodynamics, all of those courses. Very important. So yeah, take your coursework seriously. But also, whenever you get the opportunity to do projects, like if you're planning to stay over this summer in your first year summer in the college, think of doing a project with some professor, um, or remotely, or now that because of COVID things have started moving remotely. So think of doing a project remotely. Think of um, just contacting a professor saying, I'm in first year, I'm interested in this field, I just want to try out research, can you give me some work that I could play with? And yeah, so you could get started in that sense.
Okay.
um, yeah, and of course you have exploratory projects, and you have a lot of stuff that's part of your coursework, which is your thesis. You have your bachelor's thesis and your master's thesis. So there are a lot of opportunities to do that, to do research.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about that. And you have your summers. Summers are, like I said, time that you can apply even externally, not just in your home institution. Maybe the first time you start with a project at your home institution, and then you apply externally for further experience. As for converting your research experience to
Employment.
employability,
Yeah.
um,
Like I have an
right,
added question to this part, like the employment part.
right,
So most of the students like who do engineering physics from IITs are involved in research and development activities, right? Like they go abroad and do like PhD research, etc. So they
mhm,
are like I'm not sure if I'm right in this case, but they are usually hired by different industries like maybe like telecom, lasers, micro devices, etc. So how can we extend its scope more towards something which is inclined towards startups and entrepreneurships?
right. Okay. So you are right in that in engineering physics, the skills you gain in engineering physics are um, could be used for doing research in an employable field, say nanotechnology or lasers and stuff of that sort. Um, Not many people I know have reached that point, but that's because our department is pretty young, and it is continually developing. But so in terms of employability, typically when you are working in industry in research and development, it's difficult to obtain a research and development industrial position without a PhD. So the first point would be to obtain a PhD for a research position. Like if you want to work in a startup or a company
Like if
that
I
you,
want to start a startup, not work at a startup.
if you want to start a startup, I
Yeah,
see.
like something which is more towards the physics part of it, but not exactly like the startups these days are.
Right,
Like
right,
some, like I can like take Elon Musk as an example, SpaceX, like on
right,
that line.
right. Um, okay, I can give you some information, but again, like I said, I have no experience in this aspect. I've not
Oh, okay, okay.
thought or thought about entrepreneurship ever. But like I said, like I said, like the experience that you gain when you do research, that along with the opportunities that you have in college, because as far as I understand, there is a lot of scope to do entrepreneurship at IIT-BHU. So there are a lot of, something the Malviya Center, they
Yes,
provide
yes.
funding. So there's opportunity and there's the knowledge you gain from college, but making use of that opportunity with your knowledge, that mapping would require you to think of something that's worth you know worth monetizing.
Okay.
um, but yeah, I can't think of a sure sort process to get there. um,
Yeah, yeah,
and the only way you'll ever know that is through your experience. You think of when you It depends on field to field what you can do with stuff, right?
yeah.
So I would be not to think so far ahead, but rather go step by step. Think of some field that you're interested in. It's good that you're thinking about this long-term plans, but it's also good to think more short-term at the moment. So think about what
Yes.
field in physics you want to work in.
But yeah, what are you doing on? Like, what's your thesis on?
So I work in astrophysics, which has, as you might think, so
Like I'm
it's more
fascinated by astrophysics,
right,
and
right.
I'm okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's mostly theoretical in basis, transform through physical mechanisms might be important, how stuff in how stuff in space come together to form stars, what the stars do to their surroundings. So I do this using simulations, numerical simulations. This is a
Yeah, yeah.
knowledge. So you analyze the data and the observations. You try and make inferences with the data. So stuff like that. Um, which is why I have no context on how you can convert your scientific knowledge to
Employability.
industry,
Yeah.
because
And what do you plan to do after you complete your work at Australian National University?
yes, so because like I said, we don't have much industrial connections. Most of the people go for research positions in different universities. So this field of work called academia. So you continue your eventual position is a professor at university. um, yeah, so that's typically the position that you people in our field go for as you go further in your career.
Okay, Bhaiya, thanks a lot.
Yep, no worries. Um, Abhishek asked, "Sir, can you please share your contact number?" I have it on the slides. I will share it with Karan, and Karan can share it with you guys. Um, how time consuming is also Aditya Kabdi asks, how time consuming is research? Is it possible to do a job while doing research? Uh, okay, to answer the first part of the question, how time consuming is research? I would say it's a full time job. Um, typically, when you are joining for a PhD somewhere, um, especially if you're applying to a country outside of India, the visa you would get is a work visa, and it would be a full-time work visa, which means you work 40 hours a week, which is, on a 5-day week, it's 8 hours a day. Um, so it's a full-time job. Um, is it possible to do a job while doing research? I would say no. Sure, I mean, maybe there might be people who do it, but yeah, it's very rare. Um, yeah, is there any reason you asked that, Aditya? You can unmute if you're online.
Yes, sir. Basically, I would like to do research, but as you said, it was not that great money, right? So I would still want to live a decent life. I understand you can live a decent life with research money, but sometimes there are my wants as well, right? So if I want to fulfill those wants, would I be able to do a job in parallel? That's my question. It's a little greedy, but is it possible? That's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah. Yes, practically, I would say, if you're working for a career in research, then yes, it is, I would say, impossible to do a job on the side. As for the financial aspect, just a clarification, I did not say that. What I said was relative to industry, you would not make as much money, um, but I would still say it's a comfortable amount of money. Um, for instance, a position for a professor in India is comparable to industry, you could say. Not as much, but comparable. So I wouldn't say that you would have financial difficulties, um, but you would also not be, making as much money as could be possible. So yeah, I think there's pros and cons there in out reach at the same time. I would say that's
Thank you,
not
Bhaiya.
practical. Yep. Um, so Abhishek Chandravanshi asks, can you please tell us what all can we freshers do in the current situation of online semester? Right. So if just to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, Abhishek can unmute.
Yes, sir.
When you say online semester, I'm not sure what's going on right now. But are you guys at home? I see. Okay. So how long is this? Any idea on how long
The whole
this
first
going to continue?
semester was like that, and now second semester is also like that.
Right. Right. Um, yeah, it's a tricky situation, I would say. Yeah, it's this news surprised everybody. But yeah, you have to work with what you got, right? Um, my suggestion would be to make use of, you know the fact that it's online also gives you much more time. If you think about it, if you were in college, there's a lot more stuff that you'd be busy with because you're living on your own, you're not at home, you have a lot of other stuff to take care of, you have to go to your classes and stuff like that. whereas now you have much more time on your hands since you're at home. Classes are online, not perfect, but classes are still going on. So make use of your classes. Try and get in touch with professors via email. Um, Typically, professors, they do respond to you if you'd like to. Um, Try and set up, I mean, the fact that it's remote, or the fact that it's online, makes it easier for, for professors to have students doing projects. Um, they don't need people to come over. So yeah, get in touch with them. But I have no perfect answer. It is not ideal, I would say, that everything is online, but it's also not as bad as it could be. So at least you have things running. You have your coursework going on. You have your everything is moving at least forward. So yeah, I would say make best use of the resources that you have. Um, yeah, I think Abhishek had another question. How are research opportunities in India? I would say it's good. There are a lot of research opportunities in India, and you should think about um, you should think about gaining some experience doing research in India. Um, a lot of good places to do research. ISC, yeah, TIFR in Mumbai, Homi Bhabha Institute, National Physical Institute, um, PRL, um, even in Ahmedabad, I forgot what it's called. Anyways, so there's a lot of places in India to do good research. And a lot of my friends, I have unfortunately not got the opportunity to do work apart from in IIT with Prasoon. I've not worked elsewhere in India, but I have friends who have, and the feedback has been typically good. The experience has been good. There is a lot of good science happening in India, and it is improving over time. A lot of people are going outside of India, doing the PhDs, working, gaining some experience. Um, so yes, there's a lot of good people, a lot of good research in India. Um, so yes, I would say make use of.
Is there any scope of astrophysics research in India? Like, was there any specific reason for you to choose Australia and not India?
Um, right. Okay. There is a lot of good astrophysics in India. Um, to answer the first part of your question, for instance, IISc is doing really good research. And the IISc astrophysics is doing really in IUCA, and they're, I would say, one of the world leaders in radio astronomy, and they're also involved in the new hot topic in astrophysics. They're involved in the Indian version of the LIGO detector, Indigo, the science part aspects of it. So there are a lot of opportunities in India. But the reason I chose Australia was because, as you can imagine, there are, even within astrophysics, there's a lot of narrower fields. So gravitational wave research is one aspect. Radio astronomy is another field. Then you can have star formation, which is planet formation. So there are a lot of narrower field that I was interested in, that I had gained experience in, which is star formation. There were some research groups that I was interested in, and the Australian one was one of them. Not much research into what I wanted to do goes on in India, which is why, yeah, again, like I said, it depends on the specific field that you're interested in, the specific line of work you're interested in.
Like if I talk about black holes, time dilation,
Yeah.
space curvature, all those kind of things, then where do I look forward to?
I mean, India is really good in that aspect. So there is this in Allahabad.
JP,
I think it's HRI Allahabad. Yeah, Kartikeya points out it's HRI. Yes. So they do a lot of work in theory. And then even in TIFR, topic black holes and general relativity and things like that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, there's a lot of good science in HRI, TIFR happening in this regard. So I mean, what I would suggest is once you think of something that's interesting to you, just you have the internet at your luxury. Go on the internet,
Yes.
look for people doing that. Just search Indian astro. Just this general list of look into which institutes they are in, not just in India, even around the world. Context into what kind of research is being. So SS Vahal asks, honestly, I don't know, because yeah, I mean, sorry, but that's the best answer I can give you at the moment, because I have no idea. I don't see any other questions in the chat.
so I have a question. Can I ask?
Sure, go
So
ahead.
I'm Karthik from first year, and sir, I had two questions actually. First one was the difference in quality of life as a researcher in doing PhD or post that.
Yeah.
What's the difference in the quality of life between India and some other famous other countries like US or some country in Europe?
Yeah.
And the second question was like, uh, what's a typical day in your life, or like pre-COVID, like when there was stuff, or like when people used to go
Yeah.
out, basically. So yeah.
Okay. Two very good questions, Karthik. To answer the first part of your question regarding difference in, I think what you had in mind was difference in work culture in
Yeah.
research. Yes, own kind of work culture. Because first of all, so for instance, if you're doing a PhD in Europe, let's say Germany or France or one of those countries, your PhD is typically 3 years, about 5.5 to 6 years. So it's almost, the duration is almost double. So when the duration is different, you can expect that the work's also different, and the things that you may need to do are also different. So if you're doing a PhD in the US or in India, you have coursework for the first 2 years. You start doing a PhD. You start with your project, and the project typically goes for 3.5 to 4 years. So typically, when you join a PhD in India or in the US, you don't join with a set project. You do the coursework. You might do a couple of projects for experience during the coursework period, and then you uh, you start your PhD in a sense. You start the research part of your PhD. So they don't have coursework. So the day you meet a professor, it's already associated with a project that's already set. So um,
I
so
I was I was asking this question so as to figure out like should after 5 years should I stay over here for research or join somewhere abroad? So like that was the main motive behind.
right. So I mean, the factors I would say that you should consider. I mean, because I cannot give you a yes or no answer. So I cannot give you an answer of India is better or abroad is better or this country is better, because there is no one answer. It depends on what your priorities are and what factors you consider more important. Um, so I would say the factor I can what I can give you is the factors that you can think about that can help you make this decision. So one factor I would say would be the research field. I would say is the most important factor, because each country and each institution has some certain specific fields that they're really good at, and some certain fields that they're not very active in. Right. So the reason for me choosing Australia was because, like I mentioned, the specific area of research that I was interested in was not done in India, or not done as much as I would have wanted in India, which is why I chose Australia. So that is, I think, a very, very important aspect. Um, Another aspect is, um, so if you are doing a PhD outside of India, generally, on average, your opportunities are better, because um, because I mean, because you're when it's more difficult to get a position outside of India, I would say, um, because you're an international student, the whole world would be applying, especially if it's a competitive institution. So in that sense, your opportunities are higher if you go to a institution outside of India, because you've proved that you can get through the competitive process of getting in. And so later when you apply somewhere, that's a good mark on your CV, if you think of it. But again, that depends on which institution you are in, and which country you go to. Um, but also, I mean, living outside of India is also difficult. There's also the aspects of, it's very different to living in your home country as well. So that's also another aspect to think about. So it's a combination of factors. Um, what I would suggest is, I mean, if you can, ideally, if you can get the experience of both, um, a project in India and a project outside of India, that would give you the um, best possible scenario for making a decision. If not, talk to people like you talk to me, and think about what factors are important to you, and try and map those factors into advantages depending on which place it is. As for the second part of your question, the daily stuff I do on a daily basis pre-COVID, like I mentioned in the slide I put in earlier. So most of my day is spent, you know, in my office, either coding my day's work. Most of my work. So in my specific case, because I'm working in mostly theoretical astronomy, um, all of my work is on a laptop. I don't work in a lab. I don't go to a lab. So for someone who works in a lab, it will be a completely different experience. But in my case, most of my work is in my office on my laptop. Um, Most of my work involves coding, a lot of coding. Um, um, yeah, it's a lot of coding, a lot of reports. People underestimate how much writing is involved in research. There's just tons of writing, whether it be writing papers, whether it be writing applications for grants, application to present at a conference, application for funding, you know, just, just a lot of writing is involved, and a lot of presentations. You could be giving, especially further down the line in your career, you could be giving, 3 talks per month all over the world, and so um, you could be preparing a lot of time goes in preparing for those talks, preparing those presentations, which is why I said in the one of the slides that presentations and reports are a big part, not just in research, outside of research as well. So get used to that. Get used to, I would say, stop considering presentations and reports as burdens. It's very, very, very important. Um, yeah, that's, yeah. Apart from that, yeah. Sorry, Karthik, go ahead.
No, continue.
No, I was just saying, apart from that, there's a lot of talking as well. I mean, like, maybe it sounds a little cheesy, but at least half hour to 1 hour a day is spent drinking coffee in the coffee room. And I'm not joking here. I'm saying this very, very seriously, because it's not just a waste of time. It's very, very productive, because you're talking to other people who are your colleagues who are also doing research. Talk about your work, talk about, something you're stuck on, because everyone has different skill sets, or everyone has tried something, everyone has made some mistake at some point in their research, so they know what to do. So people can, so I mean, you can spend 5 days thinking about something, and you talk to someone and you can get the answer in 5 minutes. So the talking aspect is also very important. So yeah, a lot of my time is also spent talking to people. Yeah, I would say that's more or less the day. So I mean, in terms of research, it's a lot of reading papers and writing and coding, because that's specific to my work. If you're in the lab, it's a lot of lab work, setting up the experiments, setting up equipment, analyzing a lot of data, a lot of analyzing data. You guys might do a course in your third year, if I'm right, a computational physics course. Most important, I mean, I would say the most useful course I've ever done.
We've started it now from second semester.
Oh, second semester. Your second semester in college?
Yeah, computational physics, right? You're saying that?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, we started that.
Oh, that's
I
really
mean,
good.
it's quite basic right now, but we have a broad idea of what it is.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Take that course very seriously. I mean, I would say it's, and I found this answer to be consistent across our entire batch, irrespective of whether they're doing research or whether they're doing industry. Everyone unanimously agreed that this course was by far the most useful course that we have done in our 5 years. And
it's also very interesting.
It's also very interesting because there's a lot of practical aspect to it. You're doing stuff. And I would say that's very, very important, because that would give you a feel of what you're doing in research. I mean, when you're doing research, most of your time is spent analyzing data. That's the truth of it. Yeah, either analyzing data, or I mean, I consider myself to be a data analyst more than a researcher, because most of the time you have some data, you're trying to make inferences with that data. So that involves a lot of analysis, a lot of plotting, a lot of statistics, stuff that you will learn in your different courses, and stuff that you learn most through your research experience, through your projects. That's where you actually gain in-hand experience of doing this stuff. Yeah, so a lot of data analysis. Yeah, more or less my day.
I'm sorry, I have actually another question.
Yeah,
I just
sure, go
formed
ahead.
it. Yeah. Like you said that you should focus like towards the end of your like 4 or 5 years. We should focus on that's the basic part, that you focus on some particular department and then you do the PhD in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So suppose I am interested in multiple fields at the same time. So, what should be the process for that?
Mm. Right. So right. So I mean, ideally, you would have, even if it's not like a very narrow choice of field, it's good to have at least a broad area of research. So whether it's astrophysics or whether it's condensed matter physics or biophysics, so you have these general broad fields in physics, and you can see that even in a department. If you go to the department web page, you can see that it's divided into different broad fields of research. So it's generally good to have a broad idea in mind, at least, even if you don't have a narrow like specific field within the specific area within the broad area of research. It's good to have something at least broad, um, because typically when you apply for a PhD, you have to give your research interest as part of your application. You have to, when you write a statement of purpose, it's kind of like the letter where you try and convince the people that you're good enough to be hired, and that's where you give information about what you're interested in. So even if it's not too specific, it's good to have something more or less general area of research. Like for instance, actually, I want to do astrophysics or I want to do biophysics. I think that is probably necessary when you're applying. Um, but if you want to keep your options relatively open, it's good to do a PhD somewhere in the, somewhere with a longer, somewhere where the PhD duration is longer, like for instance, the US or India or even Australia, rather than somewhere like in Europe, because that gives you more room to explore. Because you have your PhD is 4 or 5 years, you have more room to explore. Whereas in Europe, you have only exactly your 3 years, so you have to already be, have a choice in hand. So yeah, that's what I would suggest.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I think you're done with all the questions, right?
Yep. I don't see any more.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. Thank you very much, Shyam sir, for the insightful
Yep.
session.
It
And I
was a
hope that,
pleasure.
yeah, and I think all the queries are cleared, and also thanks to all the attendees for making it so interactive and great, right?
Yep.
So we can end the session now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Bye.
I can email you
What's the,
the slides, and you can share it with the
yeah,
others.
yeah, you please share with me. I will share it with the students. Yeah,
Perfect.
okay, thank you. Bye, everyone.
Right. Thanks a lot, Karan. Bye bye.